Let's talk about drum gates. First of all, why is gating important to me? And honestly, it's not gating that's important to me. What is kind of important to me is I like having my drum tracks pretty clean. And the reason for that is cleaner drum tracks generally translate to better punch out of the drums. When we have a lot of bleed, in other words, our drums bleeding into other microphones, sometimes that can hurt the punch of things because when they're not all right in time with each other, we can have phase issues. And another part of it is it ends up smearing the transient, and smearing the transient can lead to less punch. So in general, for kind of rock, pop, the CCM stuff I do a lot of, country, some of the gospel stuff I do, any of that kind of stuff, I typically want the drums pretty clean. And the way I like achieving that a lot of the time is with a gate. And there are some great gates out there these days that are really helpful for dealing with this. But before I show you some of my favorites, I want to talk about sort of the general technique that some of these newer gates are actually employing, because you don't need to have a specific plugin to do this kind of stuff. You could do this manually if you want. Using a plugin for me is important because it just saves a lot of time, and time is money. So I have some drums here that were from a live recording. And first of all, let me just show you what we're dealing with here in terms of something that's a big problem for me in a lot of the recordings I get, and that's cymbal bleed in tom mics. So here is the floor tom. So there's a lot of cymbal bleed in that mic. Now, one of the ways that you can deal with this is a trick I learned from Tom Lord-Alge. We've got a tom hit, and there's a cymbal right after it. Now, the problem is if I just cut off all that cymbal stuff, I'm going to get rid of the cymbal, but I'm also going to lose the tone of the tom. When it comes to toms, and really drums in general, but especially with toms, the kind of attack, the snap, the click, that stuff is more in the higher frequency ranges, upper mid-range to high frequency. So 2K, 3K, 4K, 5K, depending on your particular flavor that you like, it's going to be up in there. That's also where our cymbals are. So the tone of our tom, on the other hand, is going to be much lower. And with a floor tom, typically the fundamental that floor tom has, it's going to be in the, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hertz range, sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower. So we've got this tom hit here, and there's a cymbal right after it. So one of the ways to deal with this is the trick I learned from Tom Lord-Alge, and that's to put a low pass filter on the back end of it. I actually have a button on my Stream Deck that just does this for me. Boom, it's done. So let me pull that back up. So you can see here, all that's doing is it's applying a low pass filter to this part of the drum. I can crossfade that there. Crossfade it there, and I can adjust this. I know we haven't even listened to this yet, but that filter, in this case, I've got it set at, it's at about 700 hertz. So if we listen to this drum hit now, where'd the cymbal go? It's gone. See, you could do this manually, and then maybe I don't need all of this extra stuff. We can just clean it out. If I didn't need that. Clean tom. So you can do this manually. Really time consuming though, as you can imagine. So in the recent years, we've actually been starting to have some plugins come out that sort of do this same kind of trick this technique, if you will, on, well, I use it on drums, but you could use it on anything, really, anywhere you need to do that. The first one that I started using was a plugin from Boz Digital Labs called Gatey, Watey. Boz Digital, they make awesome plugins. If you have not seen or looked at any of his stuff, you really need to check it out. I don't have any kind of affiliation or endorsement or anything with them. I just really like the stuff that Boz does. So Gatey, Watey, doing basically the same kind of thing. Let's go back in on this tom hit here. And we've got the mode here is basically it's setting which frequencies you want to preserve. And in this case, I want to preserve the lower frequencies, and we can set the crossover. It defaulted, where did it default? Defaulted at 500 hertz. We can try that. I'm going to set the attack. And so what we're basically doing with this plugin is we're creating a gate only on these frequencies up here. So I'm going to set the attack as fast as possible, the release as fast as possible, because I want to get that hit and then I want it to be out. And we might even play with the look ahead a little bit here, but let's just see what this sounds like. Play with the threshold a little bit. Here, let's do this. If you're trying to figure out where to set a threshold on a gate, a lot of times people will use the sound that they want to come through, and that's actually not the best way to set it. What you really want to do is you want to go for the bleed, and you want to adjust the threshold so that your gate does not open on the bleed, because that's the whole point. Gate stands for noise gate. It's just a shortening of noise gate. So what I really want to do is I want to set this to filter out all of the noise. And hopefully what I'm trying to capture is going to be loud enough to open it. So that's above that snare. So right there, the snare is popping and open. I just need to take it up so that the snare isn't going to open this. So that should be loud enough. Let's go back to that hit right here. So it's still getting through some of that cymbal. If I try taking the threshold up. So if I go a little higher on the threshold, it gets cleaner. So now, but still a little bit of that in there, not the end of the world. That little splash, it will probably disappear in the actual drum mix. This was a great plugin. The challenge with this, though, is it's really just gating all that. When I was using this on a regular basis, I would still add a gate after it because I don't necessarily want all of the ring and that low kind of stuff in there all the time. Next plugin I started using was the Oxford Drum Gate. Now, again, this plugin uses the same kind of thing, although it's a little different. Here, what we can do is we can adjust the sort of length of the release on a specific frequency area. So we've got the full, what they call decay. So if I go, let's play this again. So that's too long. Get it really tight. There we go. Then so there we go. That's pretty clean. So this same kind of concept, I'm basically extending where the fundamental is, which is basically this guy right here that sort of is dipping down. But other than that, pretty simple. Right here, I can see I can set the threshold on it. The other thing that this has that's really cool is it is going to detect more of the specific drum that we're working on. In this case, I just have a tom. So with that detection, I can set the threshold lower, and it does a pretty good job of filtering out the drum stuff that I don't want. Right up here is, this will adjust how close it's matching what is getting hit if I start lowering this down. Oh, it's still doing a good job and not letting anything else. But you can see some of these other meters are going off on there as other things it thinks are happening are bleeding in. That's the Oxford Gate. Great drum plugin. That's been my go-to for a long time. Now, there is a newer one out. This recently came out from folks over at Black Salt Audio. And again, with all of these plugin companies, I don't have any affiliation with any of these guys. This is just stuff I like. Silencer is the plugin from Black Salt Audio. It's another gate. I'm going to reset it to, we'll just set it to the defaults. So right off the bat, it is letting in a bunch of that cymbal. I'm going to set it to take everything out, but this debleed circuit, we can shorten this. Too short. So it's getting a lot out. I mean, really, there's a ton of cymbal in there. That's pretty clean compared to the original. No gate. Again, I can live with that little splash in there, and if it was really a big deal, you know, I got my button. And this brings up something that's an important point with a lot of the stuff. A lot of times when I'm cleaning drums, I don't just rely on a plugin. I will rely on the plugin to do maybe 80 to 90% of the work. Sometimes I will still go back in and manually clean things up. And in a situation like this, I might do it. One of the things that's hard, though, with any of these kind of gate plugins is when you have more subtlety in the playing, you know, ghost notes, or in the case here, the floor tom, if I just solo it, you can listen to it, there's a lot more going on in there. Now, in the case of this particular song, there was a perk track that is helping with a lot of that same feel, which is helpful because this was performed live on stage, and there aren't any live gates that I'm aware of at this time that can deal with that. I mean, to keep the cymbals clean and out of that mic and to keep it under control, all you're really going to get on stage are these big hits. So all those little subtle accents in there, those little extra, wouldn't necessarily call them ghost notes, but they are kind of ghost notes. Those are going to get lost live. So when I use one of my little favorites here, like the Oxford Drum Gate, you'll hear it has a real hard time getting that kind of detail in there. It's even missing a lot of the transients. Now, one of the things I can do here is we can hit this Learn Unmatched button and play it through. So now it's going to get everything, but that's, I mean, if you look at just this track, you can see this is Floor Tom City, and how long do you think it's going to take to train the plugin to get all of those hits? It's not even worth it. Just bypass it. Then I can go through in and clean it up. Now, the Black Salt Audio guys in the Silencer plugin, they've got this cool little button here that says Ghost. Let's hit that and see what happens. Now I've got all of those hits in there. Let's listen and see what happens with some cymbals, though. So actually, there were some at the top. All right, so if I crank this debleeder, turning the debleed up helps get cymbals out in that section, but I'm also losing some of the attack on those little ghost notes, if you will. So maybe somewhere in here. But that's a cool little feature. What I can do then is I can turn on automation. Let's pull up the automation lane. Let's turn this off a minute. So I can go in here, you know, from here to, well, maybe even that chorus. Why don't you wanna? There we go. So now, that's actually a really cool feature, to be able to get some of that subtlety back in there and still kind of reducing the cymbals a bunch in there. Yeah. So bring up all the toms here. Let's see. The context of the mix. Here's that section. So you can hear just that little tom hit there. What does that sound like? So it's getting that out. I bypass it. He's just got like a light cymbal thing in there. This does a really good job of cleaning that stuff up. So Silencer Black Salt Audio, this is new. I'm going to pick this up. I'm just trialing it right now, but it does a really great job. This ghost button, I'm impressed. I like it. So anyways, those are just some gates for working with toms these days, or any drums really. For me, the main challenge in most of my work is cymbal bleed in toms, with cymbal bleed in snare drums and things like that. Usually the Oxford does a pretty good job for me. But I'm gonna be trying this out and seeing maybe this is gonna be my new go-to. I don't know, but it is not very expensive and is a great plugin. So if you're looking for plugins to help you with this, Silencer from Black Salt Audio, Oxford Drumgate, the Gatey Watey from Boz Digital is still a great plugin. All this stuff does great stuff. You know, you can keep an eye out for sales and figure out what's going to work best for you. Go demo them. I mean, I think all of these plugins, there are demos available. See what's going to work best for the material you're working on and go have fun. And if you don't want to spend the money, just do it manually. You can do it. It's an option. So hope that helps. Hope that gives you some ideas to help you cleaning your toms up. I'll talk to you soon.